I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
In the first weeks of 2020, the world was completely different than it is today. An American drone strike killed an Iranian military leader. Democrats tried and failed to remove President Trump from office. Trump delivered a blockbuster State of the Union address and was enjoying the highest approval ratings of his presidency. Employment and salaries were at all-time highs. Meanwhile, brief reports out of China started mentioning a new virus, the mysterious COVID-19. Once the virus hit American shores, though, the political landscape was instantly turned upside down. The Democratic field cleared out overnight and coalesced around former Vice President Joe Biden, who soon clinched the nomination. Then he started campaigning on COVID. Hard. Like nonstop. COVID was his main thing on the campaign. Then candidate Biden took every opportunity to slam Trump over his COVID response and promised to deal with the crisis in a far more competent manner if he was elected. He was going to listen to the science. He was going to unify the country and, most importantly,
I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure.
Whatever that means. But 2 years later, COVID-19 is pretty much going just as strong. Cases are up, and government tyranny is still doing its best to tag along. As the Omicron variant rips through the US, it's clear that President Biden is face-planting or flip-flopping on pretty much all of his COVID promises, one after the other. Here are some of President Biden's biggest promises on COVID and how they've turned out. At the final presidential debate of 2020, Biden said no president can remain in power if large numbers of Americans die of COVID during their term.
Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially. Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America.
That was in October of 2020, but now, well over a year later in 2022, President Biden should be on his way out of the White House. That is, if he followed his own standards. Not only has he overseen more than the 220,000 deaths that he mentioned in the debate, but the total number of COVID deaths under his watch now exceeds the number for all of Trump's presidency. In the debate, Biden also slammed the commander-in-chief for allowing new cases to pile up by as many as 70,000 per day.
We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day, and there are over 70,000 new cases per day.
However, under Biden, the United States has seen over 70,000 new cases per day for almost every single day since August of 2021. There's even been a day with over 1 million cases, which makes the daily rate of 70,000 new cases seem like a goal that Joe Biden should aim for. Next up is Biden's promise throughout the campaign in 2020 that he had a plan to shut down this virus.
I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. I'm not going to shut down the country. I'm going to shut down the virus. I'm not going to shut down the country. I'm going to shut down the virus.
Days before the general election, Biden turned that line into his final appeal to COVID-conscious voters, of which there were many, with the promise repeated in speeches and tweets over and over.
I've said it before. I'm not going to shut down the economy. I'm not going to shut down the country, but I'm going to shut down the virus.
Even after he was elected, Biden continued to promise that he himself, through sheer willpower and the science, would shut down the virus. After meeting with a group of governors in November of 2020, Biden even promised to keep the economy open while simultaneously shutting down the virus.
I am not going to shut down the economy, period. I'm going to shut down the virus. That's what I'm going to shut down.
He even gave an impassioned speech about how the whole country would unite under his leadership to defeat the virus, even people in conservative areas.
No red states, no blue states, just the United States, united in our response, united in our purpose to stop the spread of COVID-19 and beat this virus.
But since he's been in office and overseen skyrocketing case counts, Biden is starting to sound a lot different. Literally. Biden told a group of governors that he doesn't have a, quote, federal solution to fight COVID.
There is no federal solution. This gets solved at a state level.
That's right, Joe Biden is now a big fan of federalism and states' rights. That video quickly spread across social media, gaining millions of views and surprising a lot of people who believed Biden when he said that he had a plan to defeat the virus. However, there was another video from later that day that went mega viral. This clip of Biden leaving the White House for his beach house has been viewed more than 6 million times on Twitter alone. The image of a president skipping town after suggesting he doesn't have a plan anymore has clearly resonated with a lot of people. One governor pointed out that Biden's statement that there isn't a federal solution after campaigning on a federal solution doesn't line up with the very heavy-handed actions that are coming directly from the federal government.
Well, it's a little bit ironic. I mean, whenever you see the federal mandates on vaccinations, they have, in this administration, utilized federal power rather extensively, and that's one of the things we're in litigation about. So it's a little bit inconsistent.
So did Biden just have a sudden change of heart about the role of federalism that America's founders designed? Or was his original promise just another empty political slogan to win an election? Who can know? But the visual of the commander-in-chief going back to his beach house in Delaware, moments after confessing that his entire presidential campaign was basically a sham, should give us some clues. Moving on, in connection with his promise to defeat coronavirus, Biden also made some bold statements about COVID tests. Early on in the pandemic, in March of 2020, Biden slammed Trump's efforts on testing.
The administration's failure on testing is colossal, and it's a failure of planning, leadership, and execution.
In what was supposed to be a heroic move, Biden promised to send 500 million free COVID tests to Americans, with tens of thousands of free testing locations and $3 billion worth of at-home tests available to anyone who needed or wanted them.
We're going to continue to add federal testing sites where needed, so that if you want an immediate test, there'll be a place where you can go get it. The federal government will purchase 1/2 billion, that's not million, billion with a B, additional at-home rapid tests with delivery starting in January. We'll be getting these tests to Americans for free.
However, a report from Vanity Fair revealed that Biden and his team actually rejected a plan to increase testing before the holiday rush that has led to record numbers of cases. He even turned down a, quote, free rapid test for the holidays proposal. It's literally in the name what it was. That was offered to him by a team from Harvard. It appears that the Biden administration knew they were in for trouble and announced the surge in testing a few days before Christmas, even though they knew that it was far too late to make a difference during the holidays when millions of people would be congregating and traveling. Biden seemed to admit that he'd failed in that regard in an interview with ABC.
You could argue that we should have known a year ago, 6 months ago, 2 months ago, a month ago. I've ordered 500 million of the pills, 500 million pills. 500 million test kits that are going to be available to be sent to every home in America if anybody wants them. But the answer is, yeah, I wish I had thought about ordering 500 million pills 2 months ago before COVID hit here.
Those are the words of a committed leader who's going to rally Americans with a clear and concise plan. Now, setting aside the fact that he's confusing tests with pills, the president does acknowledge that he has his own, quote, colossal failure of COVID testing. With the empty shelves at your local pharmacy, it's definitely possible that some overzealous Fauci disciples are mopping up the demand. As one Babylon Bee headline put it, quote, leftist who keeps getting COVID tests says he can quit anytime. But the real question is, where was candidate Biden during the first 11 months of his presidency? Why are we just now getting around to ramping up testing capacity? It sounds suspiciously like a failure of planning, leadership, and execution. Throughout the 2020 campaign, Biden tried to project a future of peace, love, unity, and more importantly, no more mean tweets. What we have now, instead of mean tweets, are speeches that demonize unvaccinated Americans, telling people they will die. In August of 2021, Biden started throwing around the phrase, pandemic of the unvaccinated. He explicitly pinned the entire crisis on the 80 million Americans who, under the controversial assumption that no one wants to get stuck with a needle in their arm without their consent, were holding off on getting the jab.
And here's the latest data that confirms that we're still in a pandemic of the unvaccinated. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us.
He continued to repeat his claim in the middle of December and on into 2022.
This continues to be a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
But Biden's political messaging collided headfirst with reality. The Wall Street Journal reported that not only is Omicron spreading in those who are already vaccinated, but it appears to be spreading more quickly among the vaccinated than the unvaccinated. One study in South Africa, where the new variant emerged, confirmed this phenomenon. But don't hold your breath. President Biden will probably not be giving any press conferences about the pandemic of the vaccinated. And finally, President Biden did a complete 180 on vaccine mandates in under a year. In December of 2020, Biden explicitly stated that he would not force Americans to be vaccinated.
No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory, but I would do everything in my power.
And I don't want to spoil this one for you, but you've already watched the whole video. You know what's going to happen. He didn't keep his word on that. After 8 months in office, Biden issued a federal mandate requiring everyone at companies with 100 or more employees to get the vaccine or have at least one test per week.
I'm announcing that the Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated.
Biden's order essentially makes private businesses into the federal government's vaccine enforcers. There are two options under the order: vaccinate and test employees, or face massive fines that are sure to shut down businesses. Several companies immediately sued the Biden administration over the unconstitutional mandate, including the Daily Wire, and the Supreme Court has now taken up the case. This order, laid out in the fall of 2021, happened as the White House began to shift its messaging on COVID. Now, in an ideal world, we would expect the President of the United States to manage a crisis with a level hand and refrain from politicizing it or pinning the blame on a large cluster of the population who hadn't done anything wrong. But with President Biden, lungs full of Omicron or not, we won't be holding our breath. If you think we missed any flip-flops, make sure to add them in the comments. I'm Cabot Phillips with the Daily Wire. Thanks for watching.